Welcome on inside yet another edition of the Business of Social podcast powered by STN Digital. I'm your host, David Brickley. Each and every show, we talk to the experts to get their advice and knowledge on the ever-changing social digital marketing landscape. This episode is no different. Producer Will, episode 69. Yeah, we were just talking. I used to be a producer myself, Will, so who knows? Maybe one day you'll be like me. Just kidding.
Did you ever have to look up like celebrity ages as part of your role?
Yeah, exactly. I did it. That's true. I was just actually talking to some old colleagues, some of my former bosses that I used to like not get, they paid me the second the show started. So it's like, how do you prepare for the show? You know all the great work you and Furka do preparing for the show. Imagine if I didn't pay you a dime until the show started. I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
Oh, it's an easy workaround.
So I'm pulling audio. I'm doing prep. I was working for free. All right. So number 69, as we always do, we're going to go to the most famous celebrities, age 69. There we go.
I think we're due for a return to the sports world soon, but we'll wrap up the 60s here. Some heavy hitters. Liam Neeson, Steven Seagal, Michael Keaton, Sting, John Goodman, Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker himself, Mr. T, and one more, George Strait.
All right. I'm going to write down on a piece of paper. You do it as well. We're going to ask Furker to pick this one. Write down a piece of paper who you think he's going to pick.
He's standing right next to me, so I'm going to keep it in my head.
Okay,
I won't write it down.
Keep it in your head.
I have my pick.
All right, Furker.
Steven Seagal.
Oh,
not my pick.
I got Mr. T.
I had Mark Hamill. I thought he was going to go Star Wars.
All right, Steven Seagal podcast right here on the Business Social, the boss, as we like to call it. We are actually going to be speaking to Julia Spillman. She runs a team of 76 people over at EklundGomes. They are actually like a real estate conglomerate underneath Douglas Elliman, who has like 10,000 employees. But no big deal, Will. We were talking before the show. 2018, they led about $1 billion. Actually, $1 billion in annual sales. So we're talking some high net worth individuals, some high net worth property. And I want to we haven't really gone into a different sector yet or a different industry when it comes to real estate. So different, right? From media, sports, communications, apparel, retail, and just see if there's, I love learning from different industries because there's so many things that cross over when it comes to marketing, social, audience growth, et cetera. And some things obviously that are unique to industry per industry, but I'm excited to just dig in, Will. And I know you've had some time to speak with her as well about what we can learn as marketers on the real estate side of things.
Yeah, I mentioned to a few people this week that asked me who was on the podcast, and I said it's someone from real estate, and all their reactions were like, "Wow, real estate?" What?
Yeah.
And then I kind of explained it to them, like they switched their whole strategy, and they really like embraced the digital and paid media and everything.
Well, think about it. Before COVID, I mean, real estate in particular, I mean, everything is relied on showing homes, showing properties, walking your client through the building. What happens when all that's turned off? I mean, that's got to be panic mode for any industry. So I'm excited to ask her about that, like what changed, what they did, and what technology or solutions they did back in March 2020 that now will forevermore be a part of their day-to-day. So I'm excited to get into it. Thanks for setting up, Will. This is Julia Spillman. She's the CEO of EklundGomes. All right, she is the CEO of EklundGomes. Julia Spillman joins us on the Business of Social podcast. Julia, thanks so much for taking the time. We love your background, by the way, too. Thanks for bringing the flowers out for us.
Thank you. We actually had this for a photo shoot for a step and repeat, and we decided this is going to be our Zoom background to kind of keep it fresh. It seems like Zoom is staying around. So.
Zoom is here to stay for sure. I don't know about you, but before COVID, I mean, 99.9% of my calls were on a traditional conference line. And now 99.9% of my calls are video, I feel like. So what a switch.
Yeah, well, I think also it's important because if we're not going to have that human engagement where you can see, tone can only translate so much. And typically, unfortunately, tone translates incorrectly. So being able to see that face behind the computer screen, I think is really creating that, that bridge, that gap that we still need.
1,000%. So no big deal. I read that you, about $1 billion in sales back in 2018. Not a really big number there. So I'm excited to dig into real estate and how, as marketers, we can learn from your industry in particular, because I think there's so many things that are similar when you go across multiple brands, multiple industries, but stuff that are very unique to yours as well. But if you don't mind just giving the listeners a quick background on what you do day to day and kind of your core competency there.
Absolutely. I mean, if you can figure out what is a great way to describe my job as CEO and what I do day to day, I would love that. I would say I wear essentially every hat, sometimes most of those hats at the same time. But really what, I was brought on about 4.5 years ago as the CEO of what was at that time the number one team in New York. We're now the number one team in all of the US. We broke $1 billion, as you mentioned. We followed that by $2 billion. Last year, another $2 billion, and we are on track, all fingers crossed, for probably just shy of $4 billion this year.
And you guys are under the Douglas Elliman umbrella too, right?
Yes, yes. We've been there. Frederick, John, and myself have been there for 10 years. We just all celebrated a decade of success here. It's been an amazing, thank you. It's been an amazing partnership. And we're very, very fortunate to have. Again, as we're talking about branding, you see all the companies that have that traditional real estate look and feel. And when you have these big parent companies, you're going to have a lot of agents with a lot of the same brand identity at the core. So one of the things that was, okay, we're going to stay here. We're going to stay here forever, but we need with our brand within the parent company's brand. And I think for us, that's just been an absolute home run to be able to stand out, obviously, as we talk about in real estate, really a sea of people.
That's awesome. I'm here excited about your $1 billion. You're like, no, it's actually going to be $4 billion this year, but no big deal. I want to start off I want to get into marketing overall, 10,000 foot view. Then I want to get more granular into your industry and especially dealing with high net worth individuals and things like that. But let's just start at a question I love to ask my listeners, or my guests, I should say. How do you approach marketing? What's your core belief on how to approach it?
I mean, I think with us, I think it's very different because a lot of times, the companies, they want to have those pieces that are recognizable. So it's going to be like repeat business. So we have that obviously with our logo and figureheads, but for us, because our business is changing, essentially hourly, we're constantly changing the way, because I think one of the things that we realized is, really looking at matrix. And as I always say, the numbers tell us everything. So it's matrix of success. And that's really, something that's very broad in our business, or should I say, more importantly, within the walls of our office where I am now. So with us, we tweak everything, colors, fonts, layouts for every single blast that we're sending out. So we get in essentially, as we call it, off brand, on brand. So we tweak it just enough where it's going to catch the eye. Because again, when, the last couple of years, we've sold over 800 properties. So if every essentially 2-3 hours we're sending something out.
Has a maroon template in it, you're going to start to just phase it out. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yep. So we actually watch the analytics to see when they start to drop. And that's when we start to adjust to re-engage those numbers. So I think for us, again, it's all about eyeballs. And if we go back to the, again, everything's the math game. We have to get our properties the most eyeballs possible. So I think for us, it's always thinking outside of the box. And we like to obviously be trendsetters, but as soon as it becomes a trend, we have to move on to the next thing.
Yeah, I love it. How do you, and especially in your industry, because I think at the end of the day, your product is the available real estate at the end of the day, but also the trustworthiness and just the quality of product that you guys are able to bring time and time again for people to come back for more and more. How do you explain the difference for you anyway between sales and marketing? Because I think a lot of professionals mix up those two.
Well, I think that's always a tricky question. I mean, it's a great question. And I think people, again, are trying to market themselves instead of maybe market exactly what we're doing. So one of the things that I wanted to really put in place, because when you look at our business, so the business, again, when I came in about 4.5 years ago, they were the number one team in New York for, essentially at that point, almost a decade. But it was 85% based upon new development condo sales. So the big thing was, wait a second, we've got to diversify this business. And the premise of a lot of our growth and expansion was off of this thought process of we need to really be more financial planning thinking. We need to think about diversifying our portfolio, going into other states, building a bigger resale, servicing rentals, and then obviously the feeder markets. But I think that also feeds into how are we marketing ourselves? If we're really wanting to be more portfolio managers, why are we marketing ourselves as individual transactions? So we really kind of step away from that. And it was more kind of like thinking of everything as a portfolio. So instead of being, okay, we're going to execute one trade, we're going to become the real estate, private banker and really manage their portfolio. So I think, people, they think very short term when they think about marketing properties, and they're thinking about marketing this $2 million property in LA. It's like, no. What is the bigger message that you're trying to get out? And I think that's where most realtors, and even a lot of times just marketers in general, is they're focusing on one product versus what does the entire product line say to the marketplace?
And you put all this blood, sweat, and tears into one property, and you market it beautifully, and it's great, and you get a lot of recall and all those things, and then you sell the property. So you got to start from scratch each and every time. So without that kind of umbrella approach, you kind of lose all the blood, sweat, and tears each time. Makes total sense.
And I think that another thing is, when you really think about property and you think about, like your home, yes, there's the comps, there's the comparables, there's the neighborhood, but then there's the emotional attachment. So if you don't find a way, especially in this new digital age, to connect to the property from an emotional standpoint, you're going to miss it. And I think a lot of times, again, that's layering in the person. So you can actually hit the sales, hit the marketing, and hit the branding in one very powerful post if done correctly.
Yeah, what's so interesting is through COVID, we try to look at the silver linings of this whole thing the last year and a half or so. And when you talk from our guests from Coca-Cola to ESPN to Jersey Mike's, I mean, just huge changes on how they marketed their product, on how they talk to their consumer. And I know, talking to you a little bit earlier before this show, I mean, you guys changed in a big way and evolved in a big way digitally. Again, when you're talking about property, you want to see the home, feel the home, touch the home. You want to be, and you guys just could not do that. And I was so impressed with your entire industry that it wasn't really affected. If anything, it was kind of continued to soar up during the biggest global pandemic in maybe history. So what did you guys like? Let's go back to March for a second, March 2020. That hits, I'm sure there's a little bit of, a little bit of fear there, but what did you guys change? What did you change immediately? And then what's going to just stay forever now that you've gone through that?
So, we went into, as everybody did, panic in the pandemic mode, as we call it. And, for us, it was, wait a second, if we're going to be locked out of our properties, we have to have every asset that we can grab our hands on. So we actually went out to photographers, videographers, and we just said, like, we're buying in bulk.
Wow.
And again, we're so large. So we said, like, we're going to place like massive, execution on these, but like, we need you to get this done in essentially 48 hours because we saw this thing happening. So this
we need 200 drones in the sky by tomorrow night. So
I mean, that give or take is exactly pretty much the conversation.
Yeah.
And so we took everything. If it was iPhones, if it was drone teams, we got every vendor that we'd used. And again, we're using these guys already in bulk. And we said, we need priority and we need this rush and we need it now.
Smart.
So we grabbed every single piece of content that we possibly could. Again, not knowing, could we maybe not get into these places over the weekend, or could this be 6 months? So we prepared for the absolute worst in every market. So then all of a sudden we're sitting on all this content, which was amazing. But then how do you package and deliver it?
Yep.
So one of the things, we're very pro Zillow. I know that's kind of like a hot topic in our industry. And, and we kind of made the thing like, if you can't beat them, join them.
Yeah.
But for us, how do we, that's a needle you got to really thread there. And for us, it was, okay, we're not going to just take these Matterports, which of course would be those digital, as I call them, the dollhouse tours. We're not going to just throw this up and say, okay, now we have all this content. We're going to throw it at the consumer and we're going to let them decipher it. So we went back and said, as real estate professionals and as the top team in the US, what is it that we're really bringing to the table? So if we say, okay, we're going to throw all of this out, at Zillow, we're actually not being the tour guide. So my goal was, how do I keep my agents in the driver's seat, even though they can't physically now go through these doors?
And control the message. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely control the message. So what we did is we worked with a team, actually, Aaron Keith, my business coach, very close with them, has made an introduction to Agent Image. And we actually built an app where we housed all of the content, whether it was, again, it was professional photos, it was videos, it was Matterport tours, and we packaged it. We branded it, obviously, and what, we're so well known for our brand. And we actually made the agents the tour guide of it. So they could present this to clients. They could forward this to clients. But instead of it being a Zillow where they're reading, they're clicking, they're kind of going down rabbit holes that, of course, as brokers want to be the tour guides.
Yep.
We said, okay, whoa, let's bring this back into our hands and let's really guide this experience soup to nuts. Because we found, as great as the FaceTime showings and things like that, and I know there's a lot of statistics saying that there was a lot of deals done like that, we didn't really see a lot of those transact. Yes, you had them, but again, it's an emotional experience. And if you cannot create that emotional connection, you cannot create that deal. So we made these beautiful presentations that, again, we delivered through an app that we could narrate it. We could control what was being sent. We control the flow of it. And also, again, we could put that personal touch in it. That was wildly successful for us. And I think, again, just thinking about how do we want to take that digital experience and hand it off to the consumer.
What was before COVID? Like, what would you say the percentage would be from like closing deals, obviously in home, face to face, and having like a virtual close, like just ballpark?
98% of it.
Okay.
And our industry is it's a people business.
Yep.
And it is an in-person, because again, you have to experience that home. Now, again, do I think that
it's a pretty big investment to make, to just like click online and say, click buy.
Exactly. Again, especially the price points that, we're averaging. And I think what it's really done though, is it's narrowed down the search. So before, maybe someone would go out on a weekend and they would see 20 properties. Now they're experiencing digitally many of those properties, eliminating them, and then taking those top picks and going in person.
And then your team is now more efficient because you don't have to see homes that they weren't interested at all ananyway.
Absolutely.
So you're able to weed them
so
out.
Absolutely. So it has been a win-win in that. And again, we were very, very fortunate to have the content, but again, the content is only so good unless you're, again, driving that experience.
Yeah. I mean, that's what's so interesting about your industry too. Cause I mean, when you talk about, like I said, if we're talking the Netflix or ESPN or what have you, it's all about storytelling. It's all about emotion. And there's no different than you selling a condo, a home, a commercial building, whatever it may be. You still have to kind of, sell that dream, as they say.
Absolutely.
And you can do that a lot with the right amount of content, especially high quality content. Did you get any large deals during like the COVID time completely virtually, where they access this stuff through the app and didn't even set foot, or is that just totally rare?
I personally think that's a little bit of like a media myth.
Yeah.
Now, again, if I was buying mass property in the Midwest around the $300,000 range, I mean, I'm pretty much on eBay at that point. Like let's just go hit purchase buy now. When you're looking at a $2, $4, $6 million property, you really just can't do that.
You better walk the property.
So we did have a few, I will say. Now, again, more investors, but what we really saw to those were people that were interested in those properties before had seen it. Then maybe it was a Zoom or an app like TouchBase with maybe another decision maker or a second opinion.
Yeah, this is such a good discussion that we're talking about right now, because I also would love to hear, again, this could be more ballpark and just kind of a gut feeling, but how much more do you think, once people get in the home now with the app experience, with the storytelling, with the content, how much more qualified are they?
I mean, I would say at least, I mean, again, we're back into this like new normal.
Hybrid,
we're seeing, this hybrid, that's a great way to put it. But when you were in still a little bit, where it was kind of coming in and out with the numbers, they were very, very, very well vetted. And again, I think you're seeing the quality of showings are substantially higher. People we value our space now too much, and we value our time in a different way.
Yeah.
So I think that people, again, they want to do stuff that they have already vetted and seen as, okay, this really could fit that box.
Yeah, it's so great because I think so many, especially like C-suite executives, don't necessarily get it. And it's really not their fault. Maybe they just didn't grow up on it or what have you. But they're like, why are we going to spend $1 million on content? I want people, hitting the streets, hitting the pavement, showing things. It's like, no, you don't understand. We can qualify and dequalify so many people that actually our time will be even worth more money if we actually invest in this content and that storytelling. So that's awesome. Love to hear from you because you're dealing with such high net worth individuals and you're going after a very key demographic, very specific demographic. With all due respect, it doesn't really help you if you're, reaching the 34-year-old in Wisconsin that makes $49,000 a year if you're selling a, $19 million building, whatever it may be. So how do you guys, how have you found like that success and where to find those people? And ultimately, whether it comes to paid media or search or different things, like where have you found success there?
Our philosophy is just hit them at all angles because you never know the individual that may never be able to purchase one of our properties may know the perfect buyer for that property.
Yeah.
So for us, it is, I mean, if you think about, again, this is the viewership. I mean, we're hitting them at all angles. If it's, obviously Frederick, who's been on, I don't even know what seasons they're on, 11 or 12, whatever it is, $1 Million Listing New York. And now, of course, a full-time cast member of LA. So we've got the TV, we've got the social media, we've got some paid advertising, we've got the Zillow. I mean, we are hitting them at every possible angle. And I think that, again, seeing that on repeat, whether it's our branding, our logo, the parent company, and then of course the properties, I think is absolutely critical because, you see, you have this philosophy and, I know Zillow and some other companies have dealt with it a lot where, homeowners in a certain price range don't want their properties out there. And, we're one of the teams that disagree with that because again, it's a numbers game. And the more eyeballs that you can possibly get on something just ultimately mathematically confirms that that's the higher chances of getting the best price for the property. So we are very, very big in that, like a digital blanket of everything we can get out there.
And what metrics do you guys track? I mean, I'll be curious just to know like how many touch points it takes to hit somebody with content or, meetings or walkthroughs or what have you before they agree to, sign the paper for the $20 million, $80 million, project or what have you. So have you guys kind of built that out and any metrics or any like, I guess, insights that you can share that shows you again, because it seems like you guys are really pulling levers in real time based on the data you're looking at.
I think as far as, what we're kind of seeing now, because it used to really be like that 3 or 4 was kind of that like magic number. But now you're really seeing more 2, 2.5, because now again, let's asterisk that with a digital presentation of some capacity.
Right. Yeah, because they're understanding what they're getting into before they take a guess. I love that. What do you think the future is of the real estate market and with COVID and everything that happened and the changes that you guys made? Like, what do you see it the next 3 to 5 years where it's going?
We were very fortunate because Frederick really believed in the digital presence, and we really moved away from paper. I mean, gosh, probably about 6 months before COVID, and we did these beautiful digital magazines that are our brochures because we found, again, what was happening is you got to think again, what is that connectivity to the property? So if you leave, you've got all these bags, you can't re-experience it the same way because you're like, okay, which one was this? Which one is that? I can't remember this. So what we do is we do these beautiful follow-up emails.
It's all in some Dropbox, with like 19 other flyers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what we did is these beautiful magazines that, again, it's a visual walkthrough of experience. So we had done that, really started transitioning in that, I would say the first of the year. And then, of course, presenting so much of our stuff on social media. Frederick has, between the two platforms, over 2 million viewers. So that was really a way for us to get in the living room of essentially everyone that could be the buyer or could know our buyer. And that was before a lot of people went very heavy digital. So we really were ahead of the curve of what obviously ultimately was going to come. But I think so much of that is here to stay. And I think that you're starting to see, we got really heavy into video. So instead of doing a traditional, here's the bedroom, here's the bathroom, kind of stats videos, they were fun, they were engaging. And most importantly, instead of being 5 minutes that we know no one is ever going to get to the end of, they were 30 seconds.
Smart.
So we're looking for, what is the hit reel? How do we grab attention? And while everybody was looking to explain, now you're in the 4-car garage, like nobody's getting to the 4-car garage. Now, ultimately, a lot of times we'll have longer video, but we need to get them interested and we need to actually get them in the home.
You gotta have them excited to watch the movie trailer before you watch the hour and a half
absolutely
feature length film.
Yep. Absolutely. And that was always Frederick's thought is, how do we get that? Because everybody had really gone to video, but you're talking about 2, 3, 4 minute videos that nobody was watching. And when you have the type of, at that point, there was so much inventory in all of our markets.
Right.
So it's getting lost there versus, and Frederick's, he's wild, he's loud, he's out there. They would do dance videos. They would do, how do we just grab people's attention? And that what really, really, especially in our properties in LA. And we had some really amazing records that we did during the lockdown there. And we did those through very over the top, very hyper focused 30-second reels.
It's awesome. And then out of your 76 employees, I'm just curious, like how many are dedicated to content and trafficking that to potential buyers? Like, do you have a team? How do you guys make sure you curate all that content and get it out to the people that need to see it?
Yep. As crazy as it is, Frederick and John, my partners, they both are hyper involved with that. So Frederick, for example, all of his posts, as I joke, I probably have a social security number. I do not have the logins for his Instagram. He is hyper focused and engaged in that because we know the type of impact it has on our business. So we have a whole marketing team that's dedicated to, again, content.
Got it.
Because agents they're out there showing, especially in this market. So you can only be so many things. You can't be the CEO, the CPA, the CFO, and the CMO of your business, which being an agent, you do have your own individual business. So we try to take as much of that off of our agents' plate so they can do what they're best at, and that is sell. So I would say every other day a Dropbox is sent around with content to post, whether it's in the grid or most of ours is Instagram stories. Now, what we do is that covers all the markets. So yes, maybe John on our team is going to be more focused on his property in New York City,
right,
but he also needs to be marketing that obviously he can assist these clients in the other markets. So we try to do as much content to, again, kind of keep them top of mind of any of the properties that our affluent buyers may be interested in.
I'm curious, I'm sure it's a pretty high percentage, but when you're looking at like a New York market, are you just targeting New York and that's 98% of your potential buyer? Or with these higher, price buildings and these properties, are you kind of actually casting a wider net of people that want to have real estate in different states, or maybe they're moving and things like that? Like, where do you see that percentage from a geo target situation?
So we're very fortunate because we have a lot of very large new developments. So when I say new developments, of course, something that's, being built, a new building, and a lot of those are in pre-sale. So because they're such large properties, a lot of these, maybe a small building is 38 homes all the way up to say 250.
Yep.
So we're able to take a lot of data from those sites, especially as we send out what we do is we create like a teaser page. So it's gauging interest. But what we're doing on the back end is we're actually watching who's coming in to that site and obviously where they're based.
Creating
so it's a great way.
and all that. Yeah, it's great.
So it's a really great way because these are buyers that would be closing on something for 2 years. So it gives us the ability to forecast what other markets are interested in moving into our market. So we really follow the analytics. And now again, at any given time, we have 15 of these properties within the 4 states that we represent properties in. So we really can see where the money is moving. And one of the things that we found was really interesting is, the concept of art collectors. They're now really becoming home collectors. So we also know what are the markets that a lot of these very affluent buyers are looking to have a collection of homes in. So, there's a lot of different, if you take all these kind of like little subsections of the market. But you can also see, I think now with COVID, that kind of threw a monkey wrench in what a lot of people's more basic social media philosophy was okay, again, exactly like you said, well, this is a New York property. Most likely there's a very high percentage they're coming from New York. All bets are off. And that's why, again, we were able, and what we feel was really able to dominate the market because we had already cast that net so big to obviously a national and an international because of Frederick's reality shows. And we were just looking for that buyer. You could say within, again, you may be able to describe that buyer. You have absolutely no clue where that buyer is during the COVID time. So I think was, in a way, it was exciting for us because what we were doing that people kind of thought maybe, was a bit much was exactly what was needed. And we were so ahead of the curve in having, again, that captive audience that ultimately was anyone and everyone.
That's awesome. Julia, I know you can't look into a crystal ball, but you got to tell me, what is going to happen here? I think every 10 years, usually on average, there's obviously some type of bubble or some type of correction. I think we've had like 13 years now or something like that. And since we've had that, so I'm in San Diego. I want to buy a home. I think I need to wait a little bit, but I'm afraid if I wait, we might have another 5-year. Like, what's the market telling you? And like, it's crazy how it continues to go up.
Well, I think one of the things that, right now, obviously, is just, as we all know, the supply and demand. Yeah. And I think that's why New York, we've had, obviously, New York was the scariest market for us because we were in the, just obviously, we hit the COVID height before anyone else. So we were completely locked down. I mean, it was borderline illegal to show a property in New York City for 3 months. Yeah. So when you have such a large percentage of our business year over year coming out of New York, that was obviously a very disturbing place to be. But what started happening is New York, as it started to slowly open, because it has the inventory, and obviously there was a little bit of price adjustments, you had that absorption period that just really was able to move, where the other markets started to accelerate substantially faster, but hit a brick wall because, of course, the inventory issues. Yeah. So one of the things that I think, especially in Florida, that a lot of people aren't factoring in is you had a lot of people that were renting homes. And now, obviously, again, as we go into this hybrid, as you best said, a lot of those people are returning maybe to their original location, maybe purchasing in a new location. But these short-term COVID rentals that obviously, as we know, turned into more of a longer-term COVID rentals, I do think a lot of that is going to, it's going to come back onto the market and create more of a supply. In junction with obviously the builders and the developers that are moving at light speed as fast as they possibly can to get more product into the marketplace. So we've got to see that ease. But I do really, really believe that this whole, housing run is here to stay. I think it will stabilize. But if you think about it, millennials especially, we didn't really value the home. I mean, I remember when we bought a beach home out in Jersey that we kind of, we purchased probably 3.5 years ago. And everybody was like, why do you guys have this big house like that? And I'm from Kentucky originally, my husband from a small town in Pennsylvania. So I was like, well, for us, it kind of, is that American dream that we were, in the boxes that we grew up in, felt like we had to accomplish, but always rented into the city, rented a place in Miami during the winter. now all of a sudden that interest to have that home, to have that security and protection within knowing that that home exists, it's yours, you can maneuver within the states
Or
easily.
How about if you're locked down, you actually have like a backyard to walk out into and stretch and get some like that. That was huge for me. Like, wow, I need to have a bedroom that has a gym in it just in case this ever happened again. I don't want to be in a situation where I can't move around. And I mean, that's big. I think a lot of people are starting to think about that too.
Absolutely. And I think that trend, especially for millennials, which, weren't always the biggest in the purchasing arena, they really obviously supported so much of the higher end rentals. You're seeing a huge shift in that. I think that's exciting.
This is more like on the lighter end residential market, like whatever, $1 million and less. But are you concerned at all about like just foreclosures with the inability to evict people during COVID and everything like that? Will we see like an overcorrection with that?
I think that's the only market that I think there could be some disparity in, but then we're also not factoring in that that's the market that needs the most supply. And you're going to have people, more affluent buyers, they're going to come in and sweep and purchase those at very much non-foreclosure pricing.
Yeah.
So I think that's the only reason I think that shift, there'll be enough buyers out there that will be able to take care of that marketplace.
I have a real estate friend in LA, and he said, there's like 3 houses at Hancock Park and 2 houses in Beverly Hills. I mean, the inventory is just like lower than it's ever been. It's just, there's nothing to buy. So,
well, and then where do you go? So, for example, our beach home, we could pocket quite a nice penny out of it.
But then you have to find some inventory somewhere else.
How do we replace it? And I think that replacement cost, emotionally and also obviously the physical cost of it is a real issue. So
those last 3 questions were just selfish on my behalf for my own personal planning, but we'll move forward. For you guys in your industry, what platforms seem to be working the most? I know you mentioned Instagram and the 30-second reels and things like that, but LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, have you ventured in TikTok at all? Like, what seems to be hitting your core demo as much?
Instagram is still number one for us. We're venturing a bit more into YouTube with some success, but Instagram, hands down. And also, I feel like that's the safest platform for the biggest reach. Because at the end of the day, I always joke, there's a lot of things I've been able to accomplish. Adding time to each day is unfortunately still not one of them. So, you've got to go with the biggest bang for your buck. And Instagram, we're still finding is the best way to
especially
reach.
With being able to post like 10 photos in an album for each post, and IGTV for longer form of content, and maybe your IG stories for quick form content. You're right. You can do everything in one platform, which is awesome. All right, I have a few more just kind of rapid fire questions here towards the end before we wrap up. Any book or newsletter or blog that you read frequently that you think would be helpful for really any marketer or any leader of a department or business?
Gosh, I mean, the hard things about the hard things, hands down. I mean, I reread that during COVID, and I told Aaron Keith, I was like, if I start quoting stuff from that book, just let me know, because I actually think that I wrote the book at this point. I mean, I had those things like Post-its around.
I love it. I love that book too. And by the way, Aaron Keith's been on the show, and he's both of our business advisor and coaches. So great dude, has a lot of good book recommendations as well. What's the favorite marketing, social, analytical tool that you use often that just gives you a lot of data and value?
That one, I feel like we're always changing that one. And I think for us, again, that is the one thing why I would say, we love like Instagram. We don't like to try to diversify ourselves. When it comes to analytics, we want every number and every data point that is out there. So the more you can consume that, the more obviously, you can decipher what that data is actually telling you.
What's a marketing stereotype or something that you see in your industry that just needs to go away?
Oh gosh, we could do a whole podcast
Open it up
on that. I think the biggest thing is how people are branding themselves. If there's very few, obviously, big personalities in our industry, but everyone is a personality in our industry. Now, I love that, but at the same thing, you have to figure out what is that emotional connection. And if you cannot connect with people by giving your authentic self, it's never going to work. I mean, people, it's like smelling it's like smelling blood in the water.
Yeah.
And I think people, especially realtors, the stereotype of the cheesy social media, Instagram is unfortunately incredibly too true. The hashtags, the this and that.
Yeah.
It's a bad look for the whole industry. I hate to say, people want to be curious about people. They want to learn about people. They want to, they want to be guided by someone that they trust and they feel like they know a little bit about. So I think that putting that authentic self out there is super important. But I also think too, you got to spend a lot of time really deciding what you're ultimately wanting to put out there. And then staying very true and authentic to that road.
Yeah, I feel like people too often try to like fit in the box what they see other people do and try to, mimic those same things, but it's not authentic to their personality or what they're trying to portray. Any advice for any upcoming marketers? Obviously you were able to grow your own team to an incredible size and have so much success, but as you kind of look back over your tenure and you're giving advice to the student or the up and coming marketer, like what's your main point you always give out?
My biggest thing is listings get listings. So with every home, if you can just grab a listing, you should be able to sell that home, but your goal should ultimately be sell 4 homes for it. And I think that people think too short term in the sense of kind of like that almost like turn and burn capacity.
Yeah.
You've got to get that listing. You've got to market that listing. You've got to market yourself with that listing. And then you've got to be able to be, again, this emotional connector that when you're in the home with the open houses, the showings, you've got to be able to also connect to that buyer and potentially represent them outside of that house. So every listing should be 4 deals.
And then what's one takeaway that you can, regardless of industry, whether you're trying to market a basketball shoe or you're selling a $50 million piece of property or whatever you may be doing, like one key tenet or tactic that you just think is a great piece, either advice or just like insight that you think every marketer and every, leader should be looking at when they're looking for success?
Again, I think sometimes one of the things that, we're all very bad at is like going back to basics. And I think, putting
the fundamentals, I love it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Put yourself as the consumer and, what would you want to obviously engage?
We don't want to be sold to. That's for dang sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think, we joke a lot. Let's just go back to basics. So, everybody wants to make everything almost too advanced. And again, you're losing that connectivity and that emotional connection.
I think what often happens too is you're so familiar with your brand because you live with it every day that you start missing key educational tenets of what you're trying to get out there. Cause like, oh yeah, that's obvious. Like, no. These people don't know who you are. They never saw you. Like they're literally like walking up to you and you have to like start from scratch, I think. But that's such a great point about it seems simple. And I always, even like when we get into brand work with our clients, it's like, what's our purpose? What's our core audience? What's our demo? And so often that gets skipped and people go right to the cool stuff. And why is it not working? Well, it's not laddering up to any major mission. So that's such a good point anybody can take away from. Well, Julia, thank you so much for the time. I'm glad Aaron connected us and congrats on all your success and all you're doing. I'm excited. I'm in New York about once a month, so we'll have to connect for a coffee when I get out there.
Yeah, absolutely. We got a beautiful showroom here in Flatiron. We'd love to have you stop by. We got a lot of marketing stuff in the window. So I love it. Love to hear your critiques.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Julia. We appreciate it. Thanks for the knowledge.
Perfect.
All
Thanks.
Right. Bye.
Bye.
All right, there you go. Episode 69. Thanks so much, Julia, for hopping on the program. Again, I really enjoy, reading different books about different industries or talking to different people because there's always a nugget or two of information that you can glean from someone that's doing a similar discipline when it comes to marketing and obviously running a business and trying to get sales. It's much different than selling a $90 pair of sneakers, Will, or unfortunately, with my terrible habit recently, a StockX $400 pair of Jordans. But it's much different, right? When you're going after somebody that needs to drop 21 million. But you know what was funny that I really learned in this podcast, Will, is like, oh no, if we're selling a huge property in New York, two things I learned. We're not just looking at New York. We're looking at like international. We're looking at the entire United States because people are trying to get into New York. People are trying to invest in New York. But additionally, yeah, I may hit up Will Kelly, who doesn't have $29 million, or David Brickley that doesn't have $29 million, but maybe our uncle does. And we flip over that Instagram via DM, and the rest is history. So that's pretty incredible that I never really thought about. Makes sense, but I never thought about just casting that wide net and let the people do the work for you.
Well, once Dogecoin surges up again, I may be giving Julia a call.
Yeah, I agree.
But no, I thought what she said was really interesting. Like when you walk into a house, they hand you a pamphlet, and you're like, I don't care. Like, how much does this place cost? Let me see it. You know, what are the specs? And it's like that's what they can now advertise and kind of make a more personal feel rather than like, well, let me just get you in the house. I thought your
Well, you and I have worked together over 3 years now here at STN just on qualifying customers. Like, is this a legitimate opportunity? Do they actually have budget? Is it something we can actually spike up and do in a short amount of time? I mean, we're still tinkering with that as we speak because it costs so much time when you, in our industry, put together a huge proposal and a 50-page deck and, oh yeah, we only have $9,000. Like, what? So making sure in the real estate market too, like, let me give you all this information, the drone shots, the pictures, the app, the 3D tour, and shoot, man, once you get people in the home, well, you know, you've already got them at the 5-yard line, or as, you know, Camille would say, the 80-yard line.
I thought your movie analogy, like just walk into a theater, like, I can just sit down and watch this 3-hour movie.
No
like,
way.
No. I want to know what it's about, who's in it, how long is it, all that kind of stuff. And I think,
and again, it seems simple. We talk
there.
so, and sometimes when I did the hashtag sports panel, you probably remember me saying this, talking with Tanya Yuki over at Shareably, but I kind of like feel silly sometimes talking about the fundamentals. Like, hey, we're launching a social media platform. What's our purpose? What makes us unique? What core demo are we trying to attract? I feel silly like giving that advice, but so many people don't do that. They don't have that conversation. They never get in a room. They never talk to their colleagues about where they want to go. And they just start marketing stuff. And it fails. And then they have to rebrand a year later. But it's amazing how you think that's pretty simple in nature. Like, yeah, put together a 30-second sizzle of trying to sell a big piece of property, but you'd be amazed. I feel like the majority of people, over 90% of people, don't even think about that as part of their marketing a product. So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, always back to the basics of get some interest, find out who's interested and target them, and then drive home that message and see who you can, get to show up to your house and sell.
Yep, absolutely. Well, thanks so much for setting it up, Will. And of course, thanks to Dave Fricker as always. This has been another edition. Thanks to Julia as well for joining us on the program. Hope you learned a few selfish questions there towards the end by David Brickley as I looked at the skyrocketing prices here in San Diego. Like, what is this thing going to crash? But hopefully you guys got some value and knowledge out of that. It's been yet another edition of the Business Social Podcast powered by STN Digital. I'm David Brickley.